In this video we're doing the top 10 best RC cars ever made, in my opinion. Okay, let's get this first one over and done with. Number 10, the Traxxas X-Max. The X-Max debuted in 2015 as a 6S large-scale RC truck and quickly became renowned for one of the toughest RC cars around. The first release was a 6S. A couple of years later they released the 8S X-Max, and that's what we see today. Big, fast, tough RC truck. It only takes a quick search on YouTube to find that quite a few people like it. And then very recently they released the XRT, a low slung truggy version of the X-Max, and again, fast, tough, massive, and really good fun. Number 9 is the Team Associated RC10. Released in the early 80s, the Associated RC10 took the racing world by storm. Most of the other off-road buggies that were racing at the time were predominantly toys, whereas Associated built the RC10 purely for racing. And from what I've heard, the Tamiya racers didn't know what had hit them. They were one of the very first companies to dedicate their focus on actual RC racing rather than producing RC toys. They'd started a little bit earlier than the 80s. Only in the 70s they had a couple of nitro models. They had the RC1 and the RC100. These were kits you could buy off the shelf and race them, and today they are still going strong. This is the RC10 6.4, so the revision 6.4 from the original. This is a thing of beauty. I've raced it a couple of times, and you only need to look across the world at all the top RC racers and you'll see the Team Associated name sat at that top spot many, many times. If it wasn't for that original RC10, this thing would not be sitting where it is today in the top rankings. Number 8, this one is going to divide opinions probably more than anything else on this list. Number 8 is the WL Toys 144001, a cheap RC buggy made by a Chinese company on a list of the best RC cars ever made. Well, there's been loads of cheap RC cars coming out of China for a while, and they're pretty good. And this little one from WL Toys, the A959, actually turned a few heads because it was crazy fast, it was cheap, and it's tiny. When they replaced this with the 144001, I think a lot of eyes started looking on these Chinese companies. So I think the 144001 definitely changed a lot of people's minds on the cheaper stuff. And where this thing stands out about the rest is how fast you can get it. There's a massive community of speedrunners, and the 144001, and then the 12 scale variants, people are making them go crazy fast, and that is the thrill of it. You can go really fast for not a lot of money, and the buggies themselves don't cost any more than a single battery for your Traxxas X-Max. Agree or disagree, you cannot deny that these little buggies have changed how we look at cheaper RC cars. Number 7, we are going for a crawler now. This is the Axxis AX10. On its release in 2007, the most sort of crawler-like RC trucks were generally based around monster trucks, big chunky wheels, not a lot of flex, and they kind of looked good but didn't really perform that well. Then Axxis comes out with the AX10, which is a dedicated, ready-to-run rock crawler, and the world of rock crawling has not been the same since. Number 6, and my favourite Traxxas ever, the Traxxas Summit. So my favourite Traxxas, it goes everywhere, it's got lock-in diffs, a 2-speed gearbox, it looks good, and it's pretty much a do-everything RC truck. It was released in 2009 as a 1/10 scale. 1/10 scale? Yeah, okay. For me, it's the best one they've ever made. And still today, almost 15 years on, it's still awesome, and you'll see people out and about having fun with these all the time. Came out in 2009, still relevant in 2023. My favourite. Number 5, the Arma Nero 6S. So this arrived in 2016 and it was like nothing else. It was a big 1/8 scale 6S powered monster truck, and it had something called a diff brain. It had a centre, a front and a rear diff, and it had a really unique feature that was probably the first, and it allowed you to select different driving styles. So you had blast mode, which was all the diffs unlocked. You had wheelie mode where you could lock the centre diff. You have a drift mode where the centre and rear diff were locked. And then the last one, you had a climbing mode where all the diffs were locked. It had this really cool internal structure. It was really tough, and it came down with like a lay down suspension design, which actually turned out to be the feature that ended the Nero pretty quickly. That infamous lawsuit from Traxxas that was filed because of the Nero's lay down suspension, they had a patent on that design, even though, well, those that know, lay down suspension was nothing new in 2016. And on the same platform as the Nero was the Phazon and also a 6S Big Rock. Yes, the little Big Rock that you know and love today had a big brother. Well, until Traxxas ruined the day. Number 4, the team associated Rival MT10. The MT10 is 100% the best 1/10 scale basher you can get. And that's not just me saying that. It's been doing the rounds online now for a few years, and it's that tough that even the hardest bashers out there can't break it. Although they aren't indestructible, they do break. It just takes an absolute beating to break something on it. And something I love about the MT10, it's never been marketed as a super tough basher like you see so many other RC trucks. It just takes it all day and it doesn't have to shout about it. Unfortunately, the same can't be said about its big brother, the MT8. Number 3, and I could easily put this at number 1. It originally came out in 2012, over 10 years ago, and this has definitely paved the way for what street bashing is now. Well, it would have paved the way if probably YouTube was a bit bigger in 2012. In the last 10 years, it's gone through a few body and wheel changes, along with the livery that Ken Block was using at the time. But other than body and wheel changes, the car, I'm pretty sure, is the same as it was over 10 years ago. The Fiesta variant was discontinued a little while ago. There is a Subaru that was brought out more recently, but again, it's quite hard to find. But this one, it's not impossible to find them. There's a couple of new ones on eBay, but the Fiesta is definitely the most sought after. 1, because it's so good and it looks awesome, and 2, well, because of the tragic death of Ken Block. Anything with Hoonigan or Ken Block's name on it is going to be sought after. If you want to get your hands on one, you can win this actual one that I've got in my hands here, with this body and wheels and a different body and wheel set as well. Prize competition is in the description. You got about a week left on it, maybe some ticket offers on there as well, but you can get your hands on mine. There's a link in the description that'll tell you more about what you're going to win and, well, how you can get it. I feel I need to introduce number 2, standing in front of my 1982 Hilux, because yes, it's a 1982 Hilux, and it is the iconic 1982 Hilux from Tamiya. And the reason it's number 2 is purely down to how this thing made RC and model enthusiasts around the world kind of stop and stare with their mouths wide open. 40 years ago, and this thing had an all metal construction, solid axles, leaf sprung, it had a 3-speed proper mechanical gearbox with proper gear selectors in there and everything, and it was super scale looking, like nothing else really. In reality, it didn't actually perform all that great. The suspension was really stiff, the gears were tricky to set up, the body was pretty fragile, but all that aside, it was a big player in the RC hobby and certainly made a huge impact. And anyone from the 70s or 80s or even from the 90s will probably remember that iconic video of them pulling an actual Hilux. I regret selling mine because they do command quite a bit of money now. And on the same platform, you also had the Blazing Blazer, which I've never had the pleasure of owning, but I would really like one and I would love to take it to the beach. And that brings us on to number 1, the Arma Infraction. Yes, the Arma Infraction. From the moment I got mine, I knew it was going to be a tough one to beat. So easy to drive, it sounds epic. And this is a good thing and a bad thing, but if you're a little trigger happy, you will burn through a set of tyres on the first run. Something else about the Infraction, it says 80+ mile an hour on the box with the speed gearing, and it's quite a modest figure on the box. I had over 90 mile an hour with mine, and many others have also got over 90 mile an hour straight out of the box on that speed gearing. The platform is shared with a Limitless, and although mine looks like it could go fast, I've yet to run it at its full potential. The current RC car world record is actually a Limitless with a GT body on it, but it's 222 miles an hour. And it's not just that one out there. There's quite a few others with the Limitless and the Infraction platform that are reaching absolutely ridiculous numbers. I'm hoping that mine is going to get me some silly numbers very soon. It's going to be a tough platform to beat for pure speed, handling and fun factor, that's for sure. So that is my list of the best RC cars ever made. You may agree, you'll more likely disagree on some or all of my selection, and that's absolutely fine. We all have different opinions, and I can't force you to have the right opinion. I'll see you next time.